She doesn't belong here, someone muttered. But 5 shots later, she owned the range. They gave her a broken lane, mocked her second-hand rifle, and sabotaged her score. What they didn't know? She wasn't there to win a trophy. She was there to burn every lie they built into tradition. This is the story of Amara Cole, a black teen who was ignored at the shooting range until one perfect shot shattered the record, the silence, and the system. Now, before we dive deeper, please subscribe to our channel. We share powerful, meaningful stories like this every day. And drop a comment below to let us know where you're watching from. Thank you so much, and now let's get back to the story. Are you lost, sweetheart? The woman's voice was coated in condescension, her eyes flicking over Amara's worn sneakers and second-hand rifle case like they were violations of sacred air. Amara Cole didn't flinch. She had walked 12 blocks to get here, past shuttered storefronts, potholes, and 2 separate men who had tried to tell her to smile. She hadn't smiled, not once. Not until she saw the towering white columns of the Birchwood Shooting Club glinting under the morning sun. Now, as she stood before its pristine glass doors, with sweat on her brow and defiance in her spine, she wasn't about to be turned away by a woman who thought perfume and pearls made her a gatekeeper of excellence. "No, ma'am," Amara replied, steady. "I'm here to shoot." The receptionist, her gold name tag reading Mrs. Baines, tilted her head with that same sugary disdain. "This isn't a carnival booth. We're a private range." "I checked your website," Amara said, pulling a folded sheet from the side of her backpack. "Day passes. $75 plus lane fees." For a moment, Mrs. Baines didn't move. Then her lips thinned like paper drawn taut across an unspoken judgment. "Of course. One moment." Behind Amara, the polished doors opened. A gust of cool, filtered air whispered past her as a cluster of teens in matching gear swept into the lobby. Custom rifle cases slung over shoulders, embroidered names on monogrammed jackets, and that effortless air of people who'd never been asked to prove they belonged. At the center was Carter Langston, the golden boy of Birchwood, blonde, tall, all-America charm with cheekbones like sculpted marble and a smirk that curled like smoke. His gaze landed on Amara and lingered. He didn't need to say anything. His look said it all. "What is she doing here?" The receptionist smiled again, but this time it was genuine. "Welcome back, Carter. Your usual lane is ready." Carter glanced at Amara's rifle case and let out a low chuckle. "First time?" "Yes," Amara answered coolly. "I could give you some tips," he offered, loud enough for his entourage to laugh. "I'll figure it out." Carter raised his eyebrows. "Suit yourself. Just don't shoot your foot off." Then he turned, tossed his head back like a shampoo commercial, and disappeared toward the premium lanes. Mrs. Baines took her sweet time processing the paperwork, her fingers clicking over the keyboard with pointed delicacy. "Are you 18? "Yes," Amara lied. She was 17, but she knew if she told the truth, they'd find a way to block her. One wrong answer, and they'd tighten the velvet rope around this ivory tower and pretend it wasn't about who she was. Her jeans were clean, but faded. Her case was scratched and old. Her hair was pulled back in a tight bun that had seen one too many double shifts at Cindy's cafe, and her fingernails still smelled faintly of bacon grease. But her grip was steady. Her aim? Sharper than anyone at Birchwood would believe. She was assigned lane 12, the farthest one from the center. Where the lights flickered, the target holders were bent, and the bench wobbled like an old seesaw. But Amara didn't complain. She unzipped her rifle case with care, revealing her Winchester Model 70, worn along the stock but polished by love and sweat and late nights spent watching marksmanship videos under a blanket. It wasn't much, but it was hers. Her first shot missed, not by a lot, but enough to draw a snort from the man on lane 10, who wore a leather shooting jacket and a smirk just like Carter's. "She even know which end the bullet comes out of?" he muttered. His buddy laughed. Maybe she thought it was laser tag. Amara said nothing. She reloaded, breathed, exhaled. Her second shot clipped the edge of the outer ring. Her third kissed the bottom rim. They weren't perfect, but they were hits, and they were hers. Nobody gave her lessons. Nobody coached her. Every technique was carved from trial and error, from failing and standing back up. She'd learned in her backyard using sticks as rifles, tin cans as targets, and stones as bullets. while Carter Langston was probably learning to shoot from Olympians on custom-built ranges with coaches who wore golf shirts and used words like elite trajectory, Amara was trying to balance on overturned paint buckets and dodge stray cats. She kept shooting until her fingers ached, and when the lane went silent, she noticed him. Mr. Santiago, the quiet man in janitor blues, sweeping near the racks of ammunition with surgical precision. He had watched her without speaking, his eyes unreadable but focused. As Amara packed up, he spoke for the first time. "You grip too tight," she turned. "Breathe out as you pull the trigger. Let the shot surprise you." Then, like a ghost, he vanished. That night, Amara's mother didn't wait long to start. "You spent how much?" Denise Cole, still in her hospital scrubs, paced across their small living room like a storm confined to four walls. $350 on a gun? And you're late on your college application fee?" Amara sat on the second-hand sofa, her eyes fixed on the floor. "It's not just a hobby. It's not a plan either," Denise snapped. "We are 3 months behind on the electric bill. You're 17, Amara. You should be thinking about stability, not shooting competitions." "There are scholarships," Amara murmured. "For people like Carter Langston," Denise replied. "Not for girls working the night shift at a diner." There was no malice in her tone. Only fear. A mother's fear of watching her child pour dreams into a system that was rigged against her from the beginning. Amara didn't argue. She couldn't. But that night, after her mother had gone to bed, Amara sat on the floor of her room. She laid the Winchester across her knees, pulled up a YouTube tutorial titled Advanced Rifle Marksmanship, and whispered, "I belong there, and I'll prove it." She dry-fired for hours, mimicking the recoil, adjusting her stance, tracing every motion with obsessive precision. She would be back at Birchwood, not to beg for space, but to claim her place. And they wouldn't ignore her forever. "I'm sorry, ma'am, that lane is reserved." The receptionist didn't even look up from her clipboard as the words fell flat and cold. Amara Cole stood at the front desk of Birchwood Shooting Club for the second time that week. Her palms clammy, her rifle case slung across her back like defiance wrapped in canvas. She'd arrived 10 minutes before opening, hoping to claim an early lane before the premium members rolled in with their monogrammed gear and family names engraved on their stocks. But she wasn't fast enough. Or maybe she'd never be fast enough for a place that was designed to move the goalpost each time she got near. "I'll take whichever lane is open," she said, voice even. The receptionist, still not making eye contact, flipped to another page and muttered, "Lane 12. Again, of course. The broken bench, the shadowy lighting, the furthest corner from anything that looked like belonging." Amara bit her tongue. She'd brought her own duct tape today, torn from a roll at the diner. She didn't need their approval, just their space. She headed toward the back, boots echoing against the tile floor. Her shoulders tensed with every step. The air already carried whispers. "She's back? Thought she flunked out the first time. Maybe she's a charity case." The rifle case on her back felt heavier than usual. She was halfway to her lane when it happened. "Hey," a girl's voice called from behind. "You dropped this." Amara turned. A girl with sharp brown eyes, espresso skin, and purple-tipped braids held out a paper napkin with something scribbled on it. Amara took it reflexively, then frowned. "This isn't mine." The girl grinned. "It is now." Before Amara could respond, the girl leaned against the wall beside her and tilted her head, studying her like she was a riddle worth solving. "You don't belong here, huh?" she asked, not unkindly. Amara stiffened. "Excuse me?" "I mean that as a compliment," the girl said. "Neither do I. But my dad's rich, so they let me skate by." She stuck out a hand. "Saria James, welcome to the Birchwood Hunger Games." Amara shook it cautiously. "Amara, no last name?" Amara raised an eyebrow. "Cole." Saria gave a small laugh. "Got it, Amara, leave me alone, Cole. I didn't come here to make friends." "Good," Saria said, already walking beside her. "That makes 2 of us." By the time Amara reached lane 12, the other members were already taking turns showing off. Tight groupings, smug glances, click-clack triggers like expensive applause. Amara placed her duct tape on the bench's loose leg, crouched, and began assembling her rifle with the care of a surgeon, unaware that Saria hadn't left. "You really do this alone?" Saria asked, watching her. Amara didn't stop moving. "Yes." "No coach?" "Nope." "No rich uncle with a subscription to Marksman Monthly?" Amara gave her a sideways look. Does owning a box fan from Goodwill count? Surya snorted. Definitely not, but I like your style. That afternoon, Amara returned home to the scent of lemon cleaner and the click of her mother's heels across the floorboards. Denise had cleaned the kitchen again. She always did after working a double shift. It was her version of control. How was school? She asked without looking up. Fine, Amara replied. A lie. How was the range? That made Amara pause. Denise finally looked at her daughter. You think I don't know? You've been washing your apron with brass residue on it. Amara sighed. I'm being careful. That's not the point. It's my money, Mom. From the diner, not yours. Denise opened her mouth, then closed it again. She was tired. Amara could see it in her eyes. Not just from work, from the weight of being both parent and protector. I just don't want to lose you to something that won't love you back, Denise said quietly. Amara's voice softened. It's not about love, it's about freedom. That night, she cleaned the Winchester in her room, polishing the barrel until it gleamed under the flickering desk lamp. Outside her window, sirens howled across the city's dark veins, but inside, it was quiet. She whispered to the silence, one day, they'll see me. 2 days later, Saria walked into Cindy's cafe, the bell above the door jingling like a dare. Amara nearly dropped a tray. Milkshake, Surya announced, sliding into a booth. Chocolate, no whipped cream, and if it's not the best in town, I'm telling everyone you cheat at shooting. Amara blinked. You tracked me down? Surya smirked. I was curious. Also, I figured you owe me for keeping you sane at Birchwood. Amara rolled her eyes but walked off to get the order. When she returned, Surya was flipping through the club's digital newsletter on her phone. They're planning the annual Birchwood Open, she said, sipping her shake. It's huge. Media, scouts, sponsors, basically prom night for rich shooters. Amara sat across from her cautiously. And, Surya looked up. And you should enter. Amara laughed once, short and sharp. Right. Me. Compete against Carter Langston and his family trust fund? Surya leaned forward. You're better than half of them already. You just need practice, and a place to do it without them breathing down your neck. Where am I supposed to find that? Surya grinned. My backyard. The James estate looked like something out of a Hallmark movie. White columns, black iron gates, a circular driveway wide enough for a parade. Amara stood at the gate, suddenly aware of every fray on her hoodie. Saria waved her in like it was nothing. Back this way, she said. My dad's rarely home, and my mom's too busy pretending she's not miserable. The backyard was sprawling, hedges shaped like swans, a covered pool, and at the far end a target wall with mounted boards and an electronic scoring monitor. You shoot here? Technically no, Surya said. But I let myself. Amara stared in disbelief. This setup's better than half the club. Rich guilt, Surya shrugged. Dad entertains big donors, makes them feel rugged. Amara ran her hand along the edge of one target, clean, perfectly aligned, stable. You can use it, Surya offered. Anytime he's out of town, which is most of the week. Amara hesitated. Why are you helping me? Surya looked at her, serious now. Because I've been surrounded by people with everything, and none of them have half your fire. I want to see someone real win for once. Amara swallowed. Just 2 girls, Surya added, with bullets and baggage. They practiced for 2 hours. Amara hit 85% of her targets. And for the first time, no one laughed when she missed. That evening, as Amara closed her locker at the diner, a shadow stepped into the hallway. Mr. Santiago. He held a folded cloth in his hands. Inside, Amara could make out the faint curve of a rifle stock, polished, old, and somehow holy. You'll need this, he said simply. Amara stared. Why are you doing this? Santiago looked at her, eyes deep as wells. Because I've seen this story before, and I never got to finish mine. He turned to leave. Mr. Santiago, Amara called softly. He paused. She said it slowly, reverently. Thank you. He didn't smile, but something flickered in his eyes. As Amara held the cloth in her hands, she didn't know it yet, but history was being passed to her. Not just a rifle, a burden, a promise, a legacy. Someone's messing with my rifle. Amara's voice cut through the quiet of Lane 12 like a bullet. Her fingers trembled slightly as she held the Winchester steady, eyes narrowed at the sight mount. Something was off. Again. Her shots had been drifting left for 3 days now, even when her stance and breathing were flawless. The bench was still crooked despite her duct tape. The lighting over her lane had begun to flicker more violently than before. Now this? She knelt beside the wooden bench and pulled out the cleaning cloth. Carefully, she adjusted the screw on the scope bracket. And froze. Loose. Again. And not just slightly. It had been twisted enough to ruin any shot beyond 30 yards. Her teeth clenched. This wasn't an accident. From 2 lanes over, the soft patter of laughter filtered through her ear protection. She didn't need to look. She already knew. Carter Langston. He leaned against the divider of lane 10, cradling his custom rifle like a trophy and sipping something from a stainless steel water bottle. Around him were his usual satellites, laughing boys with too much money and not enough soul. Still struggling with that relic? He called out with faux sympathy. I hear the museum down the road takes donations. Amara didn't answer. She didn't even look at him. She simply turned the screw with deliberate care, tightened it until it held with resistance, and returned to her lane. When she fired, the shot clipped dead center. Silence from the peanut gallery. That's right, she thought. I'm not leaving. That night, after her shift at the diner, Amara found a note in her apron pocket. The paper was folded 3 times, stained with a drop of grease. No name, just a message. Miller's Barn. Friday night, 9 p.m. Bring your rifle. Don't tell anyone. D. She stared at it for a long time, her heart thudding. It couldn't be a trap, could it? The handwriting was unfamiliar, but the initials D. Donovan. The name came from nowhere, but it felt right. She'd seen him at the Birchwood lobby once, lean, weathered, arms crossed like a soldier too old for war but too bitter to retire. He hadn't spoken then, just watched. But someone had been watching her for a while now. Not just to judge, but to see. She tucked the note in her sock drawer and said nothing to her mother. Some chances had to be taken in silence. Friday came quickly. The sun dipped early behind layers of gray. A cold wind slithered through the streets of East Ridge as Amara slipped into her hoodie, pulled her rifle case over her shoulder, and walked 3 blocks to meet Surya, who waited by the curb in a matte black Jeep. You sure about this? Surya asked as Amara climbed in. No, Amara said honestly, but I'm done waiting for permission. They drove in silence past the city's edge, past abandoned sheds and lonely billboards with half-torn paper flapping like whispers. After 15 minutes, they reached an overgrown gravel path marked only by a bent mailbox. At the end of the road stood Miller's Barn, an old, rusted structure slouched against a copse of trees. From the outside, it looked abandoned, but inside, light leaked through the slats, soft yellow, alive. You're Lisa Thompson tonight, Surya said with a wink. Just a nobody from the next county over. Amara tightened her grip on the door handle. Nobody, she said softly. Not tonight. Inside, the barn pulsed with energy. Floodlights hung from the rafters. Target boards lined the back wall, some metal, some paper, others improvised with cans and jars. People of every age filled the space, old men with hats pulled low, teens in hoodies, a woman in army fatigues adjusting a rifle that looked older than Amara's entire life. This wasn't Birchwood. This was something else. $10 to shoot, grunted a man with a clipboard. Winner takes the pot. You in? Amara handed over her last crumpled bill. Name? He asked. Lisa, she said. Lisa Thompson. As she waited for her turn, she kept her back straight, her eyes low. She counted at least 20 other shooters. Some were clearly amateurs, others not. And then she saw him. Standing by a hay bale in the corner, arms folded across a weathered jacket, was Donovan. He nodded once when their eyes met. No smile. Just recognition. I see you. Let's see if you belong. Her first few shots were terrible. Her hands were sweaty, her breath uneven, her mind racing. She missed the first 2 targets, barely scraped the third. She could hear some of the watchers chuckle, shake their heads. Waste of a slot. Can't shoot a barn door inside the barn. She closed her eyes. Breathe in, hold, exhale. Don't chase, just aim. Her next shot hit the inner ring. Then another. Then a third. By the end of round 2, she was back in rhythm. Her nerves had steadied, her stance stronger. The others began to murmur differently now. Hey, the girl's adjusting. She's better than she looks. The final round came with a twist. 2 cans suspended by ropes swinging in opposite arcs. The goal, fire once and hit both. Impossible, someone muttered. Amara stepped forward, quiet as a shadow. She visualized the junkyard behind the warehouse where she practiced, old fans spinning in the wind, rusted doors creaking open on their own. Movement didn't scare her. She breathed in. The cans danced. She exhaled. The cans crossed. Crack. A perfect shot. Both cans burst simultaneously, metal pinging like bells in a cathedral. The barn erupted. Even Donovan, arms still folded, gave the slightest nod. Amara didn't smile. She wasn't done yet. As she and Surya walked back to the jeep, boots crunching gravel, an older man leaned against a pickup truck by the road, lighting a cigarette. The glow illuminated a jagged scar along his cheekbone. "Hell of a shot," he said without looking at her. "That fluke?" Amara stopped. "No." The man puffed smoke into the night. "Good. Means you can do it again, and again. That's what separates the one-hit wonders from the real thing." "Who are you?" "Call me Coach," he said with a grunt. "You'll know when it's time." With that, he flicked the cigarette and vanished into the dark. Amara turned to Surya. "What was this place?" Surya grinned. "The only place left where the rules can't stop you." As they drove home under a fractured sky, Amara clutched her rifle case tighter than ever. Something had shifted. She had fired a shot through steel, through silence, through the assumptions of everyone who'd tried to keep her small. And that sound would echo into places that didn't even know her name yet. But they would. They would soon. "Lane 7? That can't be right." Amara's voice was calm, but her heartbeat surged. Mrs. Baines barely looked up from her clipboard. "That's what it says." Amara stood at the front desk of Birchwood Shooting Club, staring at the laminated lane assignment like it had been printed in gold. Lane 7 wasn't just better than Lane 12. It was central, visible, and impossible to get without being someone. Her fingers clutched the handle of her rifle case. "Is this a mistake?" Before the woman could answer, another voice entered the conversation. "It's no mistake," said Mr. Santiago from nearby, casually checking equipment on a rolling cart. "Lane 7 had a lighting fault. I fixed it this morning. She can use it." Mrs. Baines didn't argue, but her mouth pinched into a paper-thin smile. Amara gave Santiago a glance. He didn't look at her, but as she walked away, he said under his breath, "Nice shooting, Friday night." She froze, turned, but he was already gone. The moment she stepped into Lane 7, she felt the difference. Bright overhead lighting, clean bench. Fully intact target rotation panel. No stutter, no shadows, no squeaking. She unpacked the Winchester, now freshly polished, properly zeroed, and began her drills. Every shot was tighter, every breath steadier. Her rounds clustered at the center of the board like petals circling a bloom. The other shooters noticed. She saw their eyes shift, whispered glances, measured stares. No laughter this time. She was no longer invisible. She was becoming dangerous. Later that day, Amara rinsed her hands at the diner sink when a familiar voice rang out from the front booth. "Your milkshake's still worth the hype?" Amara looked up to see Surya James, casually flipping through a Birchwood brochure, sunglasses perched on her head like a crown she didn't ask for. "Still the best in town," Amara said, drying her hands and approaching the table. Surya gave a wan smile. "You're getting better. I saw your shots today. Clean. Dead on." "Practice," Amara replied. "Yeah, well," Surya leaned in slightly, dropping her voice. "You're making people nervous, especially him." Amara didn't have to ask who he was. Carter Langston, the golden boy of Birchwood, local aristocrat of arrogance and reigning open champion. "He's talking to the board," Surya continued, "trying to get rules changed, make it harder for you to qualify." Amara blinked. "Why?" "Because you're not supposed to exist," Surya said softly. "Not in his world. You're a glitch, an error, and he wants the system to correct it." Amara folded her arms. "What does your dad say?" Surya looked away. "I don't ask," she said, "but let's just say he's not thrilled I've been seen with the help." Amara's mouth tensed. "That what I am to you?" Surya's voice dropped again. "No, but it's what I am to him. And right now, he's planning a private showcase. Investors, sponsors, national scouts. He wants Carter to win. Clean. Easy." A silence stretched between them. Amara's next words were slow, deliberate. "If he's planning to shut me out, he better do it soon." Surya raised an eyebrow. "Why's that?" Amara's eyes darkened. "Because I'm not going away." That evening, as she walked home, Amara noticed a man in a gray coat standing across the street, half-shadowed beneath a flickering lamppost. She turned to look, but he was already gone. The next morning, she returned to Birchwood for a qualifying trial. If she passed, she'd be allowed to officially enter the Birchwood Open, the competition that could lead to scholarships, sponsorships, and everything she'd been fighting toward. She set up in Lane 7 again. Everything was ready. Except something was wrong. Her first shot veered left, the second missed entirely. The scope was off. Badly. Amara's heart pounded. She checked them out. Loosened. Again. She looked around. Carter wasn't in sight. But his friends were. One of them gave her a smug glance, nodding at her rifle case as if to say, "Checkmate." She tightened it by hand, hurriedly. Too late. The qualifying judge arrived. "Let's see what you've got, Miss Cole." Her shots were passable but not precise. Not like before. Her confidence rattled, her rhythm broken. After the session, the judge sighed. "You show potential, but you're not ready yet." As she packed her case in stunned silence, a Birchwood official approached. "Miss Cole, I'm afraid I need to speak to you privately." Amara's pulse surged. He ushered her into a small office where Mrs. Baines stood waiting with a file folder. "It's been brought to our attention that you may have violated club rules by using unregistered ammunition during your previous practice sessions." Amara stared, stunned. "What? That's not true. I use standard rounds, always." "We'll be conducting an internal review," the man said smoothly. "Until then, your range access is temporarily suspended." She didn't speak. Couldn't. Not again. Not like this. As she was escorted out, she passed a hallway near the lockers. Surya stood there, watching. Their eyes met, and in that moment, Amara knew. She had told them. Betrayal hit like a physical blow. Not just the sabotage, but the silence after. The girl who had offered her a lane, a milkshake, the glimpse of friendship, had been playing both sides all along. Amara's eyes burned, but she refused to cry. Outside the club, the air was colder than before. Her phone buzzed. A message from Surya. "We need to talk. I can explain." Amara stared at the screen for a long time, then typed one sentence. "I trusted you. That was my mistake." She turned off the phone and kept walking. Behind her, the doors of Birchwood closed with a soft hiss. But something inside her had just snapped open. They wanted her gone? They should have buried her deeper. Because now they'd made it personal. "You're 5 minutes late." The voice came from the trees. Amara flinched, nearly missing the figure leaning against a rusted pickup truck in the clearing ahead. The morning fog curled around him like a cloak. Coach Donovan stood with his arms crossed, a stopwatch dangling from his hand. Amara adjusted the strap of her rifle case and stepped forward, breath visible in the chill. "The bus. No excuses," he cut in. "Time is your enemy. Respect it." She nodded once, said nothing else. "Show me your stance." Amara slid the Winchester from her case, planting her boots on the dew-covered dirt. She lowered her shoulder, exhaled, and took aim at the small metal plate hanging from a tree branch 70 yards away. Crack. The bullet went wide, half an inch to the left. Again. Donovan barked. She reloaded, aimed, fired. This time, it missed by a full inch. Donovan spat into the grass. "You're gripping the rifle like it's trying to run away. Loosen your hands. Control is not the same as fear." Crack. Still off. He walked over, snatched a stick off the ground, and drew a diagram in the dirt. Shoulder width, foot angles, breath points. "You want to beat boys like Langston?" he growled. "You think passion is enough?" It's not," he snapped. "You need to be lethal, efficient, cold. You need to make your heart beat at the pace of a machine." He turned his back and walked away, calling over his shoulder. "Again, until your blood forgets what it feels like to miss." For the next 2 hours, Donovan drilled her relentlessly. She shot from kneeling positions, from behind tree trunks, from awkward crouches over damp brush. He threw distractions at her, blaring static from a Bluetooth speaker, shouting fake insults, even tossing stones at her feet as she fired. "You think Carter Langston's going to play fair?" he snarled. "No, he'll whisper things, bump your shoulder, smile while setting you up to fail. This range is war, and you're still trying to be polite." "So what do I do?" Amara asked, sweat and dirt streaking her arms. "How do I beat that?" Donovan stopped. He looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time. "You stop playing their game," he said. "And you start rewriting the rules." That evening, Amara returned home with a limp in her step and blisters on her fingers. She found her mother waiting at the kitchen table. No lecture this time, no folded arms, just silence. On the table was a worn folder. Inside, her mother had placed dozens of target papers from the early days when Amara had practiced with sticks in the backyard. Every shot, every date, every crumpled mistake preserved. "I kept them," Denise said softly. "Every single one." Amara stared, stunned. "You were watching?" Always, her mother said. Even when I was telling you to stop, I wanted to believe you were wrong, but a part of me always hoped you weren't. A long pause. Then Denise reached into her purse and pulled out a small velvet pouch. Inside was a set of worn military dog tags and a photo, her father in fatigues, his arm around a younger Denise, rifle slung over his back, and that same sharp look Amara carried in her eyes. He would have been proud, Denise whispered. But not just because you can shoot, because you refused to let the world tell you who you are. Amara held the photo like scripture. She didn't cry, but something inside her, that last shard of doubt, finally shattered. The next morning, she was waiting when Donovan pulled into the clearing. He didn't speak as he stepped out, just nodded once. "You're early," he said. Amara didn't smile. No more excuses. Donovan handed her a weathered notebook, its cover cracked, its pages filled with drills, diagrams, and hand-sketched range patterns. "These were mine," he said, "from when I trained the junior national team." She opened to the first page. In jagged ink it read, "Discipline eats talent for breakfast." 3 days a week, Donovan said. "Dawn, rain or shine, you want this?" "I am this," Amara answered, and she meant it. By the end of the week, her fingers were raw. She trained at dawn with Donovan. In the afternoons, she practiced behind the junkyard, balancing on broken microwaves and milk crates, building endurance in chaos. Sometimes Mr. Santiago would show up silently, standing just outside the perimeter, arms folded, nodding at nothing in particular. He never gave full instructions, just murmured things like, "Left foot out half an inch. Your elbows cheating inward. Let the wind teach you." He spoke like a man offering pieces of a map, trusting her to find the path, and she did. One night, after a particularly brutal session, Santiago handed her a long velvet case. Inside lay his old championship rifle, sleek, dark walnut stock, featherweight trigger, and a scope like polished glass. This is yours," she asked. He nodded. "Now it's yours." Amara held it like it was alive. "Why me?" she asked softly. Santiago's eyes gleamed in the dusk. "Because when the world said no, you answered with a shot." Word began to spread. At the diner, customers whispered about the girl with the gun. Mechanics left crumpled bills in her tip jar marked for ammo. Nurses passing through asked about her next match. Birchwood tried to pretend she didn't exist, but the town already knew. Something was rising beneath the surface, something they couldn't stop. One afternoon, Coach Donovan stopped her mid-session. He handed her a flyer. The Birchwood Open. 1 month away. Winner received an automatic invitation to the National Junior Championship and a full scholarship to a shooting university of choice. He looked her in the eye. "You're entering," he said. She hesitated. "They'll try to keep me out." "Then you break through," she exhaled slowly, then nodded once. "Let's burn the whole thing down," she whispered. "Your application is incomplete." Mrs. Baines didn't even look up when she said it. Her manicured fingers tapped slowly against the clipboard as if rehearsing this moment for weeks. Amara stood across from her, face calm but jaw clenched. "I've submitted every form," she replied, voice steady. 10 verified range sessions, copy of my ID, entry fee, safety certification. Mrs. Baines gave a paper-thin smile. "There's been a recent addition to the requirements. Effective immediately, all applicants must submit a certification of approval signed by a club-recognized instructor." Amara blinked. "That's not in the rulebook." Mrs. Baines tapped the stapled packet without looking up. "It is now." They were changing the rules, because she was winning. Before Amara could speak, a new voice joined the conversation. "Is there a problem here?" She turned. Mr. Collins, Soraya's father, the shadow behind Birchwood's walls. Chairman of the board, owner of half the rifles hanging in the club's trophy cases. "No problem," Mrs. Baines said quickly, just assisting Miss Cole with her paperwork. Mr. Collins gave Amara a long, cold look. "You're the young lady who's stirred quite the conversation lately." Amara met his eyes. "I'm here to compete, not converse," he smiled thinly. "Admirable, but the Birchwood Open is more than just a shooting match. It's a showcase. Media, scouts, press. It's about representing excellence." "I'm excellent," Amara said simply. "And yet," he replied, stepping slightly closer, "some things remain out of reach." He leaned in slightly, dropping his voice so only she could hear. "Know your place, Miss Cole. That way you avoid disappointment." Amara said nothing. She didn't need to. Because the heat in her chest, the burn behind her eyes, it wasn't shame, it was fuel. Outside, Santiago was waiting beside the maintenance cart. He lit a cigarette, slow and deliberate. "They betting against you now," he said without turning. Amara blinked. "What?" "Langston's father has a private betting pool. Odds are 20-1 you won't even qualify." She exhaled sharply. "So they think I'll quit?" Santiago looked at her sideways. "They're banking on it." He flicked his cigarette to the pavement and crushed it under his boot. "But you're not going to." It wasn't a question. Amara looked down at the form in her hand, then up at the polished windows of Birchwood. "No," she whispered, "I'm not." That night, back at home, her mother was waiting at the kitchen table with a manila folder open in front of her. Inside were photographs, medals, faded documents, and a handwritten letter. "This was your father's," Denise said. "Found it last night going through the attic." Amara picked up the letter. The ink was faded, but the words were clear. "You'll have to fight smarter than them, baby girl, because they'll never expect you to know the rules better than they do." Her father's words, written long ago, almost prophetic. Amara's heart began to race. She raced to her room, flipped open her laptop, and began poring over every line of Birchwood's public competition policy. Buried deep within an old PDF version, page 23 of 28, was a line almost no one noticed. "In the event an applicant lacks access to an instructor, a performance-based qualification administered by a third-party judge shall be considered valid." Her eyes widened. It was still there. Never removed. Just buried. They hadn't changed the rules, they were just hoping she'd never find the ones that still protected her. The next morning she marched into Santiago's equipment room. The air smelled like oil and resolve. "Can you help me find someone?" she asked. He looked up. "I already did." He handed her a folded note. "Coach Vance, Regional Firearms Safety Board, independent, clean, fair, Monday, 10 a.m. Show him what they're trying to bury." Amara took it, her fingers trembling slightly. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. Santiago leaned forward. "You're not just fighting for you anymore," he said. "You're fighting for every kid they tried to erase." On Monday morning, she stood at the outdoor field with Coach Vance, a retired Marine with calm eyes and no time for politics. 3 distances. 5 shots each, standard qualification, he said. No fluff, just performance. Amara nodded, stepping to the line. She didn't just shoot, she answered. Each pull of the trigger was a response to every whispered insult, every sabotaged scope, every time someone called her a fluke or a charity case or a mistake. By the end, the paper targets fluttered in the wind like white flags of surrender. Coach Vance reviewed her results in silence, then handed her a signed form. "You're clear," he said. Amara exhaled, but he held up one finger. "Not just clear," he added. "You're good, real good. Don't let them take that from you." That afternoon, she walked back into Birchwood and placed the signed third-party certification on Mrs. Bain's desk. "I'm officially qualified." The receptionist's face froze. "And," Amara added, "I suggest you update your records because I know my rights now." Mrs. Bain said nothing. She didn't have to, because her silence was no longer victory. It was fear. Fear that the girl they tried to block had figured out the rules and was now rewriting the game. "Nothing personal," he said, smirking. "But the Ellison name has a reputation to uphold." The words weren't a threat, not openly. But in the world of Birchwood, nothing needed to be said directly. Power spoke in shrugs, in nods, in names. Amara Cole stood across from Tommy Ellison, Carter's cousin and the club's second favorite golden boy, as the announcer called their names for Heat 1 of the Birchwood Open. Lane 3, Tommy Ellison. Lane 4, Amara Cole. A ripple moved through the crowd. Her name still felt foreign on their tongues, like a mistake that somehow made it past security. But this time, there was no laughter, only watching, measuring. They had heard the whispers. "That's the girl from East Ridge. She's the one who trained behind the junkyard. Didn't she break a record in some underground match?" Now, the room held its breath to see if the rumors were true. Amara approached her lane with slow, deliberate steps. She laid the cloth on the bench, unzipped her case, and drew out Santiago's championship rifle. It gleamed under the lights, an echo of defiance, worn smooth by time and truth. To her right, Tommy adjusted his designer glove, chatting with a nearby judge like the outcome was already decided. "Just another heat," he said. "Nothing exciting." But Amara wasn't here to be exciting. She was here to win. The first stage was precision, 10 shots at stationary targets across 3 distances. Tommy went first, his shots crisp, practiced, robotic. A perfect 96 out of 100. Impressive. Predictable. Then Amara stepped to the line. The room fell still. She didn't fidget. She didn't bounce on her heels or clear her throat like the others. She just stood there. Then she raised the rifle, and the noise in the room disappeared. Not literally, but for her, it vanished. All that existed was breath and distance, sight and steel. Crack, crack, crack. Every shot followed the same rhythm. Breathe in, hold, fire. The center ring took hit after hit, a cluster forming like a solar flare. When the final shot punched through the bullseye, the silence shattered. A few gasps, then a hesitant murmur of applause. Her score flashed on the screen. 98, 2 points higher than Tommy. The judge didn't hide his surprise. Heat 1 winner, Amara Cole. Tommy turned toward her, disbelief curling his lip. Beginner's luck. Amara's voice was soft but clear. You mean your bad day? He stared. She walked past him. The crowd's eyes followed. Back in the competitors' lounge, the air was different. Conversations paused as she entered. Some turned away, others watched with quiet curiosity. A few nodded, the kind of nod that says, "We didn't expect you to survive the first round." She sat alone at the corner bench, carefully disassembling her rifle and cleaning the barrel. Then 3 boys entered, Carter Langston at the center. His custom gear case gleamed with chrome trim. His posture was loose, confident, trained. It was the face on every Birchwood pamphlet. "Nice shooting out there," he said, strolling toward her. "Impressive." Amara kept her eyes on her cloth. "Thanks." "But you know," he continued, "early wins don't mean much. It's consistency that counts. Discipline. Knowing when to breathe, when to fold." Amara met his gaze. "I know when not to flinch." Carter smiled. "We'll see." He turned to his friends. "She's cute, in a scrappy kind of way." They laughed, walking off. But as they left, Amara noticed something. One of them had brushed against her rifle bag. Too casual, too practiced. Her gut went cold. She stepped outside the lounge and called Santiago. They touched my rifle. There was a pause. Then, check the scope mount, and the chamber, now. Amara ducked into a side hall and opened the case again. Her heart thundered. The mount screw was barely off, just enough to throw every shot wide under pressure. She clenched her jaw, retightened it, checked the chamber. The firing pin had a faint scratch, a timing delay trick. Had she not noticed, she would have missed every single shot in the next round. She stood there in silence. No panic, no fear, just focus. They were no longer mocking her. They were afraid of her. And fear made them sloppy. When she stepped back into the lounge, Donovan was waiting at the far wall. He didn't speak, just looked at her and tapped once against his watch. Then nodded once. "Be ready." She nodded back and sat down. As she polished her rifle, every part of her breath came slower, sharper. Her blood didn't boil, it chilled, because they'd made their move. Now it was her turn. "That's Marcus West," someone whispered. "Isn't he a collegiate champion?" Amara didn't turn to look. She didn't have to. The room's temperature had already dropped with his arrival. The way the officials straightened, the sudden presence of scouts near the glass, the deliberate positioning of cameras. It wasn't subtle. They weren't just pairing her with a strong competitor. They were sending a message. Stay in your place. Marcus stood tall, lean, and clinical, more surgeon than soldier. His rifle was titanium-framed, customized down to the grip. His gloves bore a logo Amara had only seen on Olympic live streams. She knew immediately. This wasn't a match, it was an execution plan. Quarterfinal Heat 3, the announcer called. Marcus West, Lane 2. Amara Cole, Lane 3. As they walked toward the line, Marcus gave her a sideways glance, not mocking, not hostile, just dismissive. "Let's keep it clean," he said blandly, like a man talking to a cashier. Amara didn't answer. She just unsnapped Santiago's rifle from its case and began the slow, deliberate process of preparing it. Cloth wipe, chamber check, sight level. While Marcus stretched and flexed like a professional athlete on a red carpet, Amara closed her eyes and thought of Coach Donovan yelling through static. Santiago murmuring about wind. Her mother holding that old folder of bullet-punch targets. A younger version of herself aiming with a stick in the backyard. This is who I am now. The course was brutal. 30 seconds per position, 5 stances, 15 targets, wind machines humming overhead to simulate real-world drift. Birchwood's most notorious layout. Marcus shot first. It was flawless. Each movement like clockwork. Every trigger pull followed by a satisfying crack. He hit 28 of 30 targets, only 2 outer ring hits. Score 94. The audience applauded immediately. Not polite, not reserved. He nodded in return, like a king accepting tribute, then stepped aside, and Amara took her place. Her heart thudded, but not from fear. From clarity. This was the round they didn't think she'd survive. Now she was going to own it. Shooter ready? Ready. The buzzer sounded. Her first few shots were solid, center ring, then just shy, then center again. But then came station 3. The crouch fire. The wind kicked, her grip faltered. The next bullet veered right. 8. From the viewing gallery, she could feel Carter Langston's eyes burning through the glass. Someone whispered something. A pen scratched on a clipboard. She breathed in, exhaled. Then she remembered the junkyard. The wind pushing through shattered car windows, the way plastic bags used to flap like sails, the way she learned to shoot between motion, adapt. She shifted her weight slightly, lowered her elbow, adjusted her rhythm. The next shot? Dead center. And the next? Even closer. By the final station, a prone shot through a suspended tire rim, Amara had dialed in not just the target, but the pulse of the room. It was silent. Even the judges had stopped blinking. Final target. She exhaled, thumb brushing the stock, cheek steady on the grip. Crack. The tire barely wobbled. The target punched straight through. As she rose, the electronic scoreboard blinked. Score 95. 1 point above Marcus West. No one spoke for a full 5 seconds. Then came the whisper. Then the applause. Then the standing. Even the judge on the far left, Birchwood's oldest hardliner, gave the faintest nod. Amara stepped back, sweat stinging her neck, rifle still warm. Marcus approached her, stopped. He extended a hand. "You earned that," he said simply. Amara shook it. No grin, no gloat, just respect. As she walked off, she passed Donovan, who stood near the exit. He didn't smile, but he lifted one calloused finger and tapped his temple once. Mind first, then muscle. She nodded. Behind her, Carter Langston clenched his jaw. His ringer had failed, and the girl he tried to erase was now 1 round from the final. "They tampered with your scorecard." The words hit Amara like a rifle butt to the ribs. She stared at the young man in front of her, nervous, sweating, dressed in Birchwood's volunteer uniform. His name tag read Elliot, and he was trembling. "What did you just say?" she asked, steady but sharp. I saw it," he stammered. "After your heat against Marcus, one of the scorekeepers, he erased your tally, dropped 2 perfect shots to 8s, but the system flagged it because the shots were too tight. The error didn't stick, but..." He hesitated. "They tried, Amara. Tried to rob her of the best performance of her life. Tried to bury her. Again." She closed her eyes, counted to 5. Donovan had warned her about this. Pressure makes them sloppy, but it also makes them cruel. She opened her eyes and nodded once. "Thank you for telling me." Elliot looked around. "They'll fire me for this." "No," Amara said quietly. "They'll remember you." And they would, because Elliot had just opened the door to everything Birchwood didn't want the world to see. Back in the competitor's lounge, Amara sat alone, running a cloth over Santiago's rifle, every movement slow, controlled, lethal. She didn't even glance up when Carter Langston entered, his entourage flanking him like chess pieces. "Nice trick with West," he said, pacing near the lockers. "You made it close, enough for drama." Amara said nothing. "You know this ends tomorrow, right?" His voice was smooth, casual, but his fingers flexed, tight, nervous. She finally looked up. "I don't care about your trophies, Langston. I'm not here to beat your name." He frowned. "Then what are you here for?" Amara stood slowly, letting her words land like rounds in a chamber. "To remind everyone that the club they tried to keep me out of is now the club that's scared of me." She walked away. He didn't follow. That evening, the range was closed to the public, just lights humming, officials prepping targets, and Amara, standing alone in the back corridor. She stared at the championship wall, framed photos of past winners, polished medals under glass, all men, all white, all carved from birchwood stone. Then she turned to the window and saw someone approaching. Surya. Amara's jaw tensed. She turned to leave, but Surya blocked her path. "Wait, please." Amara didn't move. "I know what they did to your score," Surya said, breathless. "I know about the betting pool, about the sabotage. And now you care." Surya flinched. "I always cared. My father, he had power, and you didn't want to lose it," Amara snapped. "I get it." Surya swallowed hard. "I'm not here to ask forgiveness. I'm here to help." She pulled something from her jacket, a USB drive. This has security footage from the judging booth. It shows your real score, the attempt to change it, and who ordered it. Amara stared. Why? She asked, voice like steel. Surya looked away. Because I'm tired of sitting in the shadows while people like you bleed in public. Because if you walk out tomorrow and win, I want to know I did something right. She placed the drive in Amara's hand and walked away. No more excuses, no more apologies. Just a trail of shattered loyalty behind her. Later that night, Amara sat alone in Molly's diner, lights dimmed, rifle beside her like a friend who'd never left. Her mother arrived in silence and slid a mug of cocoa across the counter. You're not sleeping, Denise said softly. Tomorrow decides everything, Amara replied. No, her mother said, shaking her head. Tomorrow proves what's already true. She reached into her coat and pulled out a photograph. Amara as a child, holding a paper tube like a rifle, pretending to aim at cereal boxes. You've always been aiming higher, she said. Now pull the trigger. Amara smiled faintly. I will. At dawn, Santiago met her behind the range. He handed her a folded paper. What's this? She asked. He tapped his temple. A rule they forgot you'd read. It was a copy of the Birchwood Charter, signed in 1963, with a clause highlighted at the bottom. In cases of disputed scoring, any shooter has the right to demand a public review by the full judging panel. Amara looked up. They'll hate this, she said. Santiago shrugged. Let them. Then he smiled, just slightly. Let them remember the day a girl they tried to erase burned their whole playbook. I demand a public score review. Gasps rippled through the Birchwood Open Arena. Amara stood at the center of the stage, voice calm, spine straight, a printed copy of the 1963 Birchwood Charter in her hand. She wasn't shaking, but everyone else was. The judges whispered. Mr. Collins rose sharply from his seat in the viewing gallery. This is highly irregular, he snapped. It's in your founding bylaws, Amara replied, raising the document. Page 14, paragraph 3. Verified by the board, unless Birchwood now ignores its own rules? Silence. Then the head judge, a man who'd said little all day, cleared his throat. Request granted. Show the footage. The room darkened. A projector lit the screen above the shooting floor. Surveillance footage played, silent but damning. A Birchwood official correcting Amara's score after the Marcus West round, dropping her 10s to 8s, pausing, smirking, walking away. Then the original score flashing briefly, 95. The room erupted. Some gasped, some cursed, some stood, but no one stayed silent. Mr. Collins turned pale, his lips moved, but no sound emerged. Amara didn't gloat, she just turned to the judges. Restore my score, let me shoot. The head judge nodded, and the final match began. The championship challenge was infamous. 5 shots, 5 stations, obstacle lines, time limits, moving targets. It was Carter Langston's masterpiece, a course built for him, around him, designed by him. But now? It was Amara's proving ground. Langston went first. His form was perfect. The crowd applauded every shot. He finished with a score of 96, solid, dominant. Then Amara stepped to the line, and the room held its breath. First shot, 10. Second, 9. Third, 10. Her fourth bullet clipped the edge of the target, a 7. The crowd groaned. Carter smirked from the sidelines, arms crossed. Still cute, he whispered. Amara heard it, but she didn't look at him. She closed her eyes and remembered. The junkyard. Donovan's gravel-shouted drills, Santiago's whispered advice, her mother's cocoa-sweet voice saying, pull the trigger. She opened her eyes. Last shot. A tiny rotating target through a shattered glass pane. She'd have only 3 seconds when the window aligned. She timed it. Waited. Now, crack. The bullet sang. The target exploded into confetti. The scoreboard lit up. 10+1, range record broken. A hush fell. Then thunder. The audience surged to its feet. Reporters scrambled. Students screamed. Donovan exhaled for the first time in an hour. Amara stood still, rifle at her side, eyes steady. The announcer's voice trembled as it echoed through the arena. With a total score of 97, the winner of the 42nd Birchwood Open, Amara Cole. Carter Langston stormed off, pushing past officials. His legacy cracked, his father's empire shaken. And on the other side of the chaos, Santiago stood alone, quiet, wiping a speck of dust off a trophy case. His name, once erased, was now restored, right beside Amara's. Amara stepped to the podium. Reporters surged. But before anyone could ask a question, she leaned into the mic. To anyone who's ever been locked out of a place like this, Kicked down, overlooked, told they don't belong. Look up. She raised her trophy overhead. Because I didn't come here to fit in, I came to shatter the ceiling. And the roof nearly lifted from applause. Later that evening, long after the crowd had gone, Amara stood alone on the range, lit only by moonlight. Her mother walked up behind her. In her hand, a small velvet box. Inside were her father's medals. One missing piece had been added, a polished brass plate etched with the words, "Legacy isn't what you inherit, it's what you make possible for the next girl." Amara didn't cry, she just smiled, and whispered, "Let's see how far this bullet can go." She didn't break the rules, she broke the silence, and with one shot, she shattered the legacy of lies that tried to erase her. Amara Cole walked into Birchwood with a second-hand rifle and a history no one wanted to see. She walked out as a champion, a record breaker, and a symbol for underdog who's ever been told they don't belong. Remember her name, because from this day forward, they'll never forget it.